Hi friends, welcome to Oracle Aura, a space to absorb information for your soul's vibration. My name is Jada Christina and I will be your host today. So today I'll be recording my very first solo episode, which is really exciting to me, something I've wanted to do for a while now. But I've just had this stream of amazing guests on here, which I am so grateful for. But today I'll be discussing empathy and what it means to be an empath. So starting off, I'd really like to kind of just disclaim that anybody has the capability to be an empath. We're often sold this idea in the spiritual community that empaths are this select group of people who have the ability to feel other people's emotions. And while on some level that is true, it's my belief that we're all born empaths. We all come into this world with the capability of communicating energetically. And it seems like experiencing being able to absorb someone else's emotions can really kind of cast this heavy burden on people. So when they find out, oh, I'm an empath, for a lot of people, it sends them into this oh, well, I have a gift. I have this thing that's special. And absolutely it is special. But being an empath in no way makes you part of this exclusive higher up group. I think that's what's called an enlightenment trap, where we think, oh, I'm a starseed, I'm an empath, I'm this, I'm that, and it sets us apart in a way where we think, oh, well, I know something they don't know, and that's not necessarily true. That's kind of letting yourself fall into a trap of thinking that you're better than someone else in some way, and the fact of the matter is we all have the capability to feel other people's emotions. It's more so, do we let ourselves grow out of childhood and keep that ability? So for some people, empathy can be a defense mechanism. For some people, they develop this really hypersensitivity to other people's emotions because they had a lot of turbulence in their house. They had a lot of turbulence in their upbringing, and they were constantly having to anticipate the needs and the emotions of others so that they could be in a safe space. They didn't know if somebody in their home was going to fly off the handle and be angry or upset, so they had to constantly be in a state of picking up on subtle cues, picking up on other people's emotions so that they could protect themselves. So for me personally, I find that to be the cause that resonates the most. But the reason for keeping your sense of empathy and even overdeveloping your ability to absorb other people's emotions, the possibilities are endless. And really figuring out where your sense of empathy comes from and maybe why you've even overdeveloped your sense of empathy to the point of constantly absorbing other people's emotions is really something that will have to come from asking yourself a series of questions, asking yourself, why do I want to feel other people's emotions? Why do I absorb other people's emotions? It's my belief that we're doing this for a reason. We're doing this on an energetic level to help process energy, to help process emotional energy that exists in our plane, that exists in our reality right now. So maybe it's not something that we can physically see or we can physically touch, but if you are an empath, you know how it feels to absorb someone else's energy and how real that is for you. So kind of just diving a little bit deeper into what it means to be an empath. An empath is a person who absorbs other people's emotions. So for me, before I even knew what an empath was or had heard the term empath, I had so much anxiety. I was living in Orlando for a little while and I moved up to New York City, and I just remember feeling so much sadness in New York City. I was there in the winter And I wasn't super familiar with what being an empath was. And now I can so clearly see I was living in this energy soup of people who were constantly trying to be more, go faster, do more, be more, achieve more, rather than just being in the present moment. And that's not to place the blame outside of myself. I also was in that state of wanting to be more, do more, create more, just be outside of where I was. But it really did have a lot to do with me just absorbing so much emotional energy. So if you are a person who is anxious a lot, or who will just randomly get these little bouts of sadness or excitement or anger whenever you're out in public, next time that happens, really sit with the emotion. Check in and ask yourself, is this my emotion? Do I have a reason to be sad right now? Is this my emotion, or is this someone else's emotion? Because a lot of the time, you will find whenever you just feel these random feelings that they're not your feelings. They're someone else's feelings. So what do we do? What do we do when we feel those things? What do we do when we notice, oh shit, I'm feeling sadness that's not mine. I'm absorbing anger that's not mine. I'm absorbing all of these emotions that aren't mine. That's the time to really ask yourself, ask source, why am I this way? And not in a way that's like, why am I this way? Please let me not be this way, because your empathy is not going to go away. You're not going to just stop being an empath. You may turn yourself off to it, but things will kind of just collect underneath, and you'll really just go back into that cycle of anxiety and depression, in my experience. You know, maybe some people are really good at shutting it off, but I don't want to be one of those people, so I don't know. So it's my belief that when we're empathetic and we're absorbing other people's emotions, it's to help process this emotional energy. So I'm going to give you an example. There was one time where I was working at a home show. I have this little gig where I'll sell jewelry cleaners sometimes. It was like a fun little sales gig I was doing for a while. And I was working at this home show, and I was in a booth where I was next to this really nice lady. Her name was Tammy. And Tammy and I got to talking, and if you are a highly sensitive person, or if you are an empath or a very empathetic person, you probably notice that people open up to you a lot. They feel really comfortable opening up to you. So this lady started opening up to me about 10 minutes into our conversation about her son's friend who committed suicide. And I just felt for her. Like, I could feel her sadness. I could feel her grief as she spoke about this. She really thought of this child as her child. And I mean, he was 18. He was a teenager, but still, like, she thought of him as her own son. And then he took his own life. And even though she had gone through the thick of her grief, she was still experiencing that heavy sadness, and I just wanted to be there for her, but I didn't know then about holding space. So I was just kind of absorbing all of her emotional energy. And that night, I was back in my hotel room, and it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I woke up in tears. I woke up sobbing as if I had just lost someone that I loved. And rather than just saying, I don't want to feel this, or rejecting how I felt, it kind of just clicked in my head, like, I have to go through this emotion as if it were mine, because I, on some cosmic level, feel that that is more productive, both for me and for the collective energy, that I'm here to process this emotion as if it were mine. So that's not to say that I grieved for weeks and weeks of it, as if this person were a friend of mine that I really lost. But rather than pushing away that emotion and saying, well, that's not mine, I don't have to deal with that, I took it in and I sat with it. And I said, you know, I am so sorry for this person's loss. I really sat with it as if it were a friend that I lost. And I just sat with it for a little while. And I really turned inward and kind of acknowledged this person's life. And then I imagined kind of balling up the energy. So this is kind of a reverse way of holding space, I guess. I imagined balling up the energy, and then I blew it away to the universe. So it was like I did my part in processing what I could within myself, and then I sent it away. So in a way, empaths, if we're thinking of them as these people who have reconnected or never lost touch with that sense of empathy, we can see that it is a gifted group of people who do serve a purpose. And that's not to say that they're above anyone else or that they're better than anyone else. That's not the case at all. The case is that empathy is a gift. It's not a burden. It's not a burden to be feeling other people's emotions unless you don't know what to do with it. So I am here right now telling you what to do with other people's emotions and how to hold space for them. Oh my God. I wish somebody would have told me 10 years ago how to hold somebody's space, or how to hold space for somebody. So I would not have been carrying around so many emotional burdens of so many people. So if you're an empath, like I said, you probably get a lot of people who come to you and open up to you, which means that you probably get a lot of people who come to you and vent to you. So in this case, there's a little trick you can do that my aunt taught me. And what you do is you imagine a rose, a white rose, or it can really be any kind of flower, a white flower made out of light in between you and the person. So you just imagine the flower floating in between you and the person. And as they're speaking, imagine everything that they're saying going into that flower. So if somebody would have told me this before I had that interaction with the lady Tammy, I would have used this. I would have imagined a flower in between us, and I would have imagined all of the energy, all of the sadness going into the flower. And so what that does is not necessarily prevents you from feeling what they're feeling or holding space for them, or it doesn't prevent you from feeling what they're feeling. It doesn't prevent you from experiencing how they're feeling. What it does is it allows you to give them permission to release everything that they're needing to release without you energetically carrying it for them. So even then, when they do vent to you or they speak to you about their life story or whatever it is, and the energy goes into this flower, you can do with it what you want to do with it. You can, if you choose to just send it off into the universe, you can just send it off into the universe. If you choose to take a moment and look at the flower and say mentally to yourself, you know, I am so sorry that this person is experiencing this. This sadness must be so heavy to carry. I send this to the creator. I send this to source. I send this to God or goddess. I send this to whoever, whatever, the universe, whatever you want to call it, for transmutation. I send this away for healing. And then you can even imagine sending energy to this person in the form of healing, in the form of love. And I promise you, just being there for them, you just being a listening ear, does 1,000 times more than any advice will ever do for them. So that is how I hold space for someone who's venting to me one-on-one. Now let's kind of zoom out and focus on being in crowds and being in public places, because those can be really, really, really overwhelming for someone who identifies as an empath or someone who's a highly sensitive person. I have memories of being at music festivals back when I used to go to EDM festivals, where I just felt so anxious. I just felt so much anxiety that I did not know what to do with myself. I felt like there was nowhere I could escape to because there were people everywhere. And I didn't realize then that the escape I was looking for was within myself, not outside of myself. It just felt like I didn't want to turn within myself because there was so much anxiety in there. So as far as grounding and staying centered in places like a city or a crowd or things like that, it really all starts with growing that connection with yourself, growing that feeling of being grounded within yourself. And the first thing that comes to my mind is a palm tree. So my boyfriend Tim and I were sitting out front of our apartment the other day, and there's this really, really super tall palm tree that is right across the street. And he told me that during one of the hurricanes, he was looking out his window and this palm tree was literally bent all the way over, like it was touching the ground, but it didn't break. It snapped right back up when the storm was over and it was fine. And that's because the palm tree's roots are so deep. Palm tree roots grow like straight down into the earth, and they create this kind of like bulbous thing underneath the earth. So, or underneath the ground. So basically what I'm saying is that growing that connection to yourself is growing those palm tree roots. So then no matter what happens, no matter how strong the winds are, and no matter how much you're getting blown around in the wind, if you have those roots, you're not going anywhere. Your inner peace is not going anywhere. But first, you have to take the time to grow those roots. So what is growing those roots? Growing those roots is taking the time to connect to yourself. This can be in the form of meditation. This can be in the form of a yoga practice. This can be in the form of chanting, dancing, anything where you are taking the energy that you normally send outward and bringing all of that energy, all of that attention, all of that awareness back into you. Whenever you're out in public and you're feeling everyone else's emotions, if you have that connection to your core self, then you can truly ask yourself, what is my emotion? And what is someone else's emotion? And the more that you do these practices, the more that you connect with your core self, the easier that will be. I had a realization for the way that we protect our energy, the way that I protect my energy during an ayahuasca ceremony where I was holding space. So in the beginning, it was the first time I'd ever held space during an ayahuasca ceremony, and I was honestly pretty scared of absorbing other people's emotions. So I did know how to hold space with the flower trick, but this felt different. This felt like I was there to help people on this transformational journey, and not in the sense of talking to them or anything like that, but just energetically being there for them. So before we even started the ceremony, the medicine woman gave me rape, which is a type of tobacco that's blown up the nose, not snorted, but blown up the nose with a tool by a shaman for grounding, to open the third eye, and to bring you into the present moment. And it's used in several different types of ceremonies. But whenever the medicine woman gave me the rape, it felt like something just took the crown of my head and pulled me upward. Like I was sitting up perfectly straight, and the energy flowing through my body was synonymous with the universe. I felt very aligned in that moment. And I felt like the universe was telling me, there are no rules, just be. And that really reminded me that that core energy at the very, very, very core of you, under your thoughts, under your emotions, under everything. The very, very, very center of your energetic body is impenetrable. Nothing, absolutely nothing in this universe can take that away from you. That is the essence of who you are. So it created this image for me of this kind of like white, golden white rod of light flowing through the core of me. So no matter how big my energetic body was around me, things could flow through that. Things could pass through that, and I could release them as I needed to, because I know who I am at the very, very, very core of myself. And I take the time to fill my cup up. And honestly, y'all, I notice a difference when I don't. I notice a difference when I skip a day or two of meditation. I notice how shaky I feel. And it does become difficult to distinguish the difference. What's my feeling and what is someone else's feeling? So if you do decide that you want to try meditation, you can pop over to my website. I've got a free guided meditation over there. And it's actually to help stop overthinking. It's called the Relax the Mind meditation, and it's absolutely free. Just pop over to my website. It's jadachristina.com, JAIDACHRISTINA.com. And honestly, it's on the resources page. It's a great meditation to use before you go to sleep. I love that one. So meditation, yoga, any kind of practice where you're grounding and centering with yourself will really help you start to distinguish the difference between your emotion and someone else's emotion. So now let's see, we've talked about what an empath is. We've talked about how to hold space for other people, how to grow a connection with yourself. So now I'd really like to get into releasing energy, releasing other people's emotions, releasing your emotions, processing. I have several different episodes of this podcast where I talk about processing emotion, but the root of processing emotion is, don't just say, I want to get rid of it. Whenever you say, I just want to get rid of this, you are basically on an energetic level burying something. You're just covering it up and inviting it to fester and grow. So if it is your emotion, if you've come to the conclusion that it is your emotion, you can sit with that and ask yourself, like, you can get into it and ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Or you can just sit with it and you can just say, I feel this way. And just let yourself feel that way. Give yourself permission to be human and know that you are not the thought. You are not the emotion. You are the consciousness that is experiencing the thought, that is experiencing the emotion. So you can do this with your emotion, just accepting it and letting it pass and release. You can do this with other people's emotions, kind of like the thing I talked about with processing someone else's grief. You can sit with it as if it's yours and release it. And then maybe you do that and you still feel like there's some kind of fog in your energy. So there's several different things that you can do to cleanse. One of my favorites is smoke cleansing. There's actually a lot going on right now with different Native American tribes speaking up about the misuse of white sage and how basically the land is being raped for corporate greed and profit off of white sage. So if you do buy white sage, please make sure that you're getting it from a sustainable source, or you can even buy seeds and grow it yourself. There are also several different things you can use to smudge. I like to use juniper because my ancestors, the Celts and the Scottish people, they used juniper. So I like to use juniper. And I also use black sage dipped in dragon's blood resin. That's a more sustainable smudge too. So basically you just set an intention to clear your energy. You light a little bit of whatever kind of smudge you're using. And you just wave it around your body. You can wave it under your feet. And you can say a mantra while you do it too, such as, I release anything that is no longer serving my highest good. So you can also do a very similar cleanse to this in a body of water or in your shower. So you can say, I release anything that's no longer serving my highest good while you're in the shower, and let the water run over your head, and just picture the water washing away anything that's no longer serving you. You can also do this in a body of water. I love to do this in the ocean. I kind of imagine it as like an energetic baptism where I get in till up about my waist, and then I set an intention and say, I release anything that's no longer serving my highest good. I release any energy that isn't mine, that I cannot process. I release anything that is not serving me, and just dunk myself in the water, and then I get out feeling brand new. So yeah, there's several different methods of doing that. And you can also do this with your breath. So kind of a quick one that I like to do, especially if I find myself in a little road ragey kind of mood, which I find myself getting in less and less because it just doesn't feel worth it to get mad about driving anymore. Getting mad about driving almost kind of feels like punching myself in the energy body, you know? But if I do find myself carrying that anger and I'm like, okay, this serves no purpose, I don't want to feel this way, I'm ready to let this go, then I just take a deep breath and sigh it out. Imagine kind of like an HA, like a Ujjayi breath, ocean breath. Imagine sending that energy away to the universe for transmutation. So yeah, that's how I cleanse. Now, before we wrap up this episode, I'd really like to touch on empathy and codependency. One of my friends pointed out something to me, and that was that so many empaths end up in codependent relationships because they need someone else to validate their emotions for them. So I would just like to say, as someone who identifies as an empath, I have found myself in the past in so many codependent relationships because deep down, some part of me thought, I'm too emotional. I need someone to be my rock. And now I understand that that is not true. I am not too emotional. No matter how many people told me that, no matter how many people have told you that, your sensitivity is a gift. Your emotions are a gift, and they are not who you are, but they are a tool that you have. All you have to do is learn how to use that tool. So no matter how many people have told you you're too sensitive, you're driving me crazy with all your moods, please, please, please know that you are so perfectly whole and aligned exactly as you are in this moment. The world needs your sensitivity. The world needs your empathy. The world needs people who can feel. The world needs feeling right now. The world needs emotion right now. And I promise you that this is a gift. It's not a burden. Just think of it like a tool, right? If you had, say, a TV, right? A TV is a cool thing to have, but if it's on all the time, it's kind of annoying, right? You need to be able to turn off the TV every once in a while. So that's not saying to turn off your empathy, but more so to learn how to connect with yourself, to learn how to turn inward and say, what is my emotion and what is someone else's? So I hope that if you're listening to this, you'll take these tools and you'll learn how to let your empathy empower you rather than diminish you, because the world needs your gifts. The world needs you to be the most full, authentic expression of who you are. And you do not need anybody else in this world to be your rock. You are your rock. The very, very, very core of you is pure, authentic inner peace, and it exists right at the very core of you. Nobody else in this world can give you that. Only you can give you that. Thank you so much for listening today, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to screenshot this episode or make a little screen recording and post it on your Instagram story. Be sure to tag Oracle Aura so we can get in touch. Thank you so much, guys. Have a beautiful day. Namaste.